There's a valley in Scotland so beautiful that filmmakers keep coming back to it, and so heavy with grief that some locals still won't camp there overnight. Glencoe looks, on any ordinary afternoon, like the most dramatic scenery Britain has to offer. Jagged peaks dropping into a green valley floor, mist rolling low between the mountains. But in 1692, this exact valley was the site of a massacre so brutal and so treacherous that it's remembered differently than almost any other tragedy in Scottish history, not just as violence, but as a profound betrayal of hospitality, one of the deepest cultural sins imaginable in the Highlands at the time. That's the thing about this landscape. Every glen, every loch, every windswept ridge here seems to be quietly holding on to something, and the moment you start listening, this place stops being scenery and starts being a story. Tonight, we're not just chasing postcard views. We're standing in a valley that remembers a betrayal 3 centuries old, searching a loch famous for something that may or may not actually exist. Climbing toward rock formations locals swear were shaped by giants and fairies, and tasting a drink that takes its exact character from the peat bogs surrounding it. By the time this ends, you'll understand why people who've traveled through dozens of countries still describe the Highlands as somewhere that gets under your skin in a way few other places manage. The haunted valley of Glencoe. Start in Glencoe itself, and let the history settle in before the scenery does. On a snowy February night in 1692, soldiers who had spent nearly 2 weeks as guests of Clan MacDonald, eating at their tables, sleeping under their roofs, turned on their hosts under government orders, killing dozens in what became known as the massacre of Glencoe. Under the old Highland code of hospitality, harming a host who had sheltered you was considered almost unforgivable, worse in some ways than the killing itself, which is exactly why this particular tragedy still carries such weight centuries later. Walk the valley floor today, past the Three Sisters ridgeline rising sharply on either side, and even without knowing the history, something about the silence here feels different, heavier, the wind moving through the glen sounding less like weather and more like something being remembered. Legends of Loch Ness and the Isle of Skye. But that's only the beginning, because a short drive north brings you to Loch Ness. And here the mood shifts from genuine tragedy into something more playful, though locals will tell you, half joking and half serious, that they take it more seriously than outsiders assume. The loch itself is a genuinely strange body of water, over 22 miles long, and so deep in places exceeding 700 feet, that it holds more fresh water than every lake in England and Wales combined. Sightings of Nessie date back centuries, but the modern legend exploded after a supposed 1934 photograph, later revealed decades afterward to have been staged using a toy submarine and a model head. And yet the story never really went away. Sonar expeditions and amateur searches continuing to this day. Stand at the ruins of Urquhart Castle on the loch's edge at dusk. Water so dark and peat-stained it swallows light within just a few feet of the surface, and it's easy to understand why, even now. This loch still feels like it could be hiding something. Just when you think you've found the Highlands' most mysterious spot, the Isle of Skye pulls you somewhere that looks almost deliberately otherworldly. The Old Man of Storr, a jagged basalt pinnacle rising from a landslide-scarred hillside, looks less like natural rock and more like something carved on purpose. And Highland legend claims it's the thumb of a buried giant, still visible above the earth centuries after his death. A short drive away, the fairy pools sit fed by glacial meltwater running down from the Black Quillen Mountains, crystal-clear turquoise pools connected by small waterfalls, cold enough to genuinely take your breath away if you're brave enough to swim, which plenty of visitors still do despite the temperature. Locals here grew up on stories of fairies, not the delicate winged version popularized elsewhere, but older stranger beings tied directly to this specific landscape, capable of helping or harming travelers depending entirely on how much respect they showed the land itself. Castles and wildlife of the Highlands. There's one castle along this coastline that seems to exist purely to prove just how dramatic Highland scenery can get. Donan Castle sits on its own small tidal island, where 3 sea lochs meet, connected to the mainland by a stone footbridge, and its reflection on a calm day doubles the entire structure in the water below, so perfectly it looks almost symmetrical. The castle was destroyed in 1719 during a Jacobite uprising, government ships bombarding it after it was used as a garrison, and it sat in ruins for roughly 200 years before a Scottish clan chief single-handedly financed a full 20-year restoration in the early 20th century, using his own detailed dreams of the original layout, since almost no formal architectural records had survived the destruction. What happens across these mountains every autumn is almost impossible to fully describe until you've heard it yourself. During the rutting season, roughly late September into October, red deer stags compete for territory and mates across the Cairngorms, and their calls, a deep guttural roar echoing across empty glens at dawn and dusk, carry for remarkable distances through the still Highland air. Golden eagles nest across these same mountains, among the largest and rarest birds of prey in Britain, wingspans stretching over 2 meters, and spotting one riding thermal currents above a ridgeline remains one of the genuine thrills for anyone patient enough to sit quietly and wait with binoculars for an hour or more. Ancient stones and Highland history. There's one site far to the north and west that predates almost everything else in this story by thousands of years, standing quietly on the Isle of Lewis long before Vikings, clans, or even the Romans ever set foot in Britain. The Callanish standing stones, arranged in a cross-shaped pattern radiating out from a central stone circle, were erected roughly 5,000 years ago, making them older than Stonehenge's most famous phase, and older than the Egyptian pyramids. Nobody fully understands their original purpose, though their alignment with the moon's 18-and-a-half-year cycle suggests they were built with genuine astronomical precision, tracking lunar movements long before written language existed anywhere in the British Isles. There's one darker chapter in Highland history that shaped the entire region more than almost anything else, and it's easy to walk right past without realizing it. Culloden Moor, near Inverness, was the site of the final battle of the 1745 Jacobite uprising, fought in April 1746, where government forces crushed Bonnie Prince Charlie's Highland army in less than an hour, the bloodiest defeat in British soil within living memory at the time. The aftermath reshaped the Highlands permanently, traditional clan structures dismantled, Tartan and Gaelic language actively suppressed for decades, triggering waves of forced emigration that scattered Highland families across the world. Walk the moor today, marked stones scattered across open grassland identifying where different clans fell, and the flat, exposed emptiness of the battlefield feels deliberately preserved, almost nothing built on it since, allowing the site to remain exactly as unsettling and quiet as the history it holds. So maybe what makes the Scottish Highlands unforgettable isn't really the scenery at all, dramatic as it is. Maybe it's standing somewhere that survived so much, and finding that the land itself somehow remembers, quietly, in ways you can genuinely feel if you're willing to slow down and listen. If this journey inspired you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which destination you're adding to your bucket list.